Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be refinishing this vintage French Provincial dresser, so let's get right into it. I'm using an electric screwdriver just to remove all the hardware, and you can get these on Amazon for around 20 bucks, so they're super handy to have around the shop because they're way faster than a traditional screwdriver, and they're also a lot less clunky than a drill. Now for cleaning, I'm just going to use some hot water and some Dawn dish soap mixed together, and this will get rid of any oils or dirt on the surface because you don't want to grind all of that dirt and gunk into your piece when you go to sand. Now I'm going in with my detail sander on all the flat areas with a 120 grit, and then on the curvy edges and legs I'm going to switch over to a foam sanding pad so that I don't ruin the shape. It's super important when you're sanding to wear a mask, even if your sander has a built-in dust collection, because as you can see, the video is super cloudy, which means there's a lot of dust still in the air. And you don't want to be breathing all of that in because it could do a lot of damage to your lungs, especially if you're planning to do this long term. We're gonna move on to priming now, and I'm using my water-based Bullseye primer today, and if you've been here before, you'll know I usually use an oil-based spray primer, but today I went with Bullseye because I just felt like brushing it on. Oil-based primer is great if you need to cover up bleed through, but since the finish was still in perfect condition, I didn't need something so heavy-duty this time. So the way I like to prime when I'm doing it by hand is literally so foolproof that even a kid could do it. So I'll slap it on, I won't worry about brush strokes, and then I'll go in with a dry foam roller to smooth everything out. It's super beginner friendly, so if you're just starting out, give it a try. And if you get fuzzies in it, just pick it out as soon as you spot it and then roll over it. My camera actually died in the middle of this, so I didn't catch me priming the rest of the body, but the same thing applies, just brush it on and roll it out. Next, I'm going to tape off the top and cover it with some brown paper because I'm not planning to paint the top. The paper is actually really handy to have, and you can get a huge roll of this at Home Depot and you'll probably be set for years. The good thing about it also is you usually get a few uses out of the same sheet before you have to throw it away. So a big tip is to always sand in between every coat of whatever you put on, whether it be primer, which I've done now, paint, or top coat. I like to use anywhere from a 220 to a 400 grit, except on the final top coat, especially if it's a dark color, because the last thing you want to see is scratches on your finished product. I wanted to strip the top before I started painting, so I've just removed the covering and I'm pouring on the stripper very liberally and spreading it out with a chip brush. You want to use a cheap disposable brush like this because the stripper will ruin your nice ones. And just look at how easily the finish comes off. I don't even know what kind of finish it is because the wood grain underneath definitely didn't match the pattern on top. My guess it's some plastic film coating. If anyone knows, then let me know in the comments. Anyway, after I got most of the mystery finish off, I scrubbed the rest of it off with some lacquer thinner and some steel wool, and then we did some scraping on the edges to get the rest of it off. So it's the next day, and Kendall's just sanding down the very last bits of finish with a 220 to get it nice and clean before covering it back up because we're ready to paint finally. But there's one more thing I gotta do first, and that's to clean out my gun from my last project. I have the HomeRight gun, and it's been such a game changer for me and my small business. In my opinion, nothing beats a sprayed finish, and it's completely leveled up the efficiency and quality of my work. So I've just disassembled all the parts and soaked them in some hot soapy water in a little container. Now be careful doing this without a container, because there's tiny pieces to this gun that if you lose them down the drain, you're pretty much screwed. I like to scrub my jug first because it takes the longest, and then that way the other parts have a longer time to soak and loosen up the paint. So I'll scrub all the pieces with my little dollar store nail brush, fill up the jug with hot water, assemble everything back together, and then I'll just spray everything in the sink just to really clean it out. And once we've done all that, we can move on. Today I'm gonna mix a custom color of dark blue using ink black, dark navy, and carbon copy, and all of these paints are from Behr. So this gives me a really deep charcoal gray, which I love, and I hope you will too. If you're using a sprayer, be sure to strain the paint, thin it out with water. I like to do maybe 20% and then stir it all up really well. I did 2 coats on this dresser, but it'll really depend on your color. Lighter colors generally take more coats to achieve full coverage, whereas darker ones likely won't need as many coats. Now onto the top coat. I love using Behr's water-based polyurethane on my pieces, and honestly, if I had to choose only one step to use my sprayer for, it would be the top coat. The brush and roll method doesn't really work with poly because it's a really thin product, meaning that you'll get air bubbles if you try to use it. A sprayer will just give you that perfect poly every time, and you can also touch up with a sprayer without leaving a visible sheen or texture difference, which is amazing. It's dry now, and I'm just gonna sand it down just very lightly. This used to be a 220 pad, but I've used it for so many projects now. But yeah, in between every coat of whatever you put on, you want to sand lightly and then just wipe that away before you put on your other coat, and then it'll make your paint finish really, really smooth. And you want to make sure that all that dust is wiped off because you don't want that dust. You don't want the dust to end up in your finish. Now, if you're wondering why I left the stain to the very end, it's because if I get stain on my piece, then the paint's already protected and it can be wiped off with some mineral spirits. And here's a close-up of the wood that was underneath that weird finish. It's much less attractive, and I think it's birch. It's got some funky patterns, and birch is notoriously difficult to keep from blotching, so I'm going to be taking a lot of steps to get the stain as even as possible. And I'm going to do that by sanding to a high grit, as this will partially close the wood fibers, making the wood more resistant to stain. Next, I applied some homemade wood conditioner, and then I applied a whitewash to tone down the yellow and also further fill up those wood fibers, making it less thirsty for stain. Okay, I'm gonna really have to explain this next part. So the stain I'm using is Dark Walnut by Varathane, which is super old, and it's congealed itself into sort of like a gel stain consistency. Now, I thought this would be good because I love gel stains, but no, it was terrible and dried up on me so fast, making it really hard to wipe off. Eventually we got it done and it wasn't blotchy, which means all the precautions we took worked, but dang, just look at that edge. I missed the bottom and it's just staring me right in the face as I'm editing this, mocking me. But it's not the end of the world because the next day we stained it again, making sure not to miss the edge, and we even added mineral spirits to the stain to thin it out, but it wasn't enough. It was still really sticky. So you see us here trying to fix it, but making it worse first, and eventually we just soaked a shop towel with some mineral spirits and rubbed it all in, and it actually fixed it completely. So the next time you think you've messed up your stain, rub some mineral spirits on it and see what happens. Okay, now that we're done our stain and it's had a couple days to dry, I'm gonna go in with some oil-based spray polyurethane. Unlike the water-based poly, this one will actually amber over time and create a beautiful warm tone. You can use water-based poly, I've done it on a million pieces, but you have to wait until it's completely dry, which is what I do anyway. I just love using this because the spray comes out so fine, but it is more toxic, so make sure that you're wearing a respirator because a dust mask isn't gonna cut it. So we're all done with the piece and I just love how it turned out. It's got such a regal feel to it, like it belongs in a castle or something. I don't know, I love it, and it's definitely one of my favorite pieces I've done. I feel like I say that with every flip, but I swear I mean it every time. But thanks for sticking around and hanging out with me. I hope you enjoy this makeover. Make sure to subscribe to keep up with me, and I will see you guys next time.